Good evening and welcome to Stories from the Field. Boy, these have been so great to be able to talk to some of our missionaries that we partner with around the world and hear how God's at work through them, but also as we approach this Lottie Moon season, to be able to put names and faces together and see how the gifts that we give to Lottie Moon are actually being used. Boy, I'm so excited this evening to have the opportunity to talk with the Tuminello family. This is Scott and Casey Tuminello and their three beautiful girls. And Scott, I actually going to start with you and ask if you will introduce everybody to us.
Sure. So my name is Scott Tuminello and my lovely wife, Casey. And we have three daughters, Lillian, who is here. She's 9, and Taylin, who's 12, and Holland, who's helping me out. She's 7 years old.
Awesome, awesome. And so the Tuminellos are coming to us from Copenhagen, Denmark, where they serve with the board over there. Now, I know the girls are only going to be with us for just a couple of minutes, so I want to begin with you girls. Will you tell me, you know, most people here probably have never been to Denmark before. What's your favorite part about living over there?
Maybe I like how we do sometimes get snow during Christmas.
Oh, yeah. I wish we got snow ever. Snow Christmas is awesome. Yeah, what else?
We can just yeah. Do you like your school? You can tell. You can tell. Yeah.
I like in summer.
Like the summer? Yeah.
I like how there's a bunch of parks in Denmark.
A bunch of parks in Denmark. Well, yeah, that's fun. Well, that's some fun stuff that you guys get to do. That's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for that. Scott and Casey, I appreciate you, sharing your time with us and sharing your family with us here this evening. We're just kind of giving people an opportunity to meet some of the families that are serving around the world. And so just kind of want to get the chance to know you a little bit. So do you mind telling us a little bit of your story, where you're from, and then also how you came to know the Lord?
Casey, do you want to go ahead and...
Sure. I'm originally from Olive Branch, Mississippi. That's where I grew up. And I did not grow up in a Christian home, but I went just by the providence of God. I went to a daycare at First Baptist Church in Olive Branch. And through going to daycare there, that's how I kind of would also tag into their vacation Bible schools in the summer. And I got involved in their youth group because that's where I made friends. And that's how I came to know the Lord, is just through people in the church pouring into me, other friends' parents pouring into me, and introducing me to the love of Jesus Christ. And it changed my life. And yeah, so that's how I initially came to serve the Lord. I went on my first mission trip with that church, First Baptist Olive Branch, and that's kind of what inspired a heart for missions. Made me realize that there are so many people in the world who don't have the love of Jesus, but need to know about it. And so God just worked through many different avenues in my life over the years to bring us to this point here where we're living in Denmark.
Awesome.
And I grew up in a Christian home and came to know the Lord fairly early in life. I did not grow up in a Southern Baptist home, but during high school, I attended a Southern Baptist youth group. And then through college, I attended First Baptist college group with Stephen Smith. And through that, and then after Casey and I got married and were searching for a church home, we tried a lot of different churches and a lot of different denominations. And as soon as we walked back in the door at First Baptist Jackson many years ago, we really felt like we were home and where we needed to be. So at that point, I was baptized as an infant, and at that point, I was baptized by immersion, and we joined First Baptist Jackson.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you guys actually worked here in town before you answered the call to ministry, is that correct? So tell us a little bit about how God called you to the mission field, and just kind of walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, so one of my best friends growing up is another missionary with the board, and actually part of First Baptist Jackson, James Adair. I've known James
Yep.
since I was
Oh, yeah.
5 years old. And I remember clearly one day when James called me back in 2003, 4, somewhere around there, and said, hey man, I'm just letting you know that we've been called to the mission field, and we're going to move to Africa. And I thought, man, that's great. You go do that. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Be blessed. And I just remember that clearly. And then several years later, we were both we worked. Casey was a teacher, and I worked in logistics, and we were just living that American dream. And there was a time that one of the former pastors at First Baptist Jackson had a vision for serving and work in Haiti. Mm-hmm. And as we explored opportunities to go and serve in Haiti, we just clearly felt the Lord tugging at our heart, saying, "Hey, I've been working on your life in church and in the career field, but now I really want you guys to go in a different direction." And so we started praying about that with our local Sunday school leaders there at First Baptist Jackson. And through several years of prayer and time with the Lord, we ended up saying yes, and went to Chiang Mai, Thailand. Actually was our first assignment with the board. And then now we've landed in Copenhagen, Denmark for the last 3 years.
So Casey, how about for you? I mean, you're married to somebody who does logistics. And then all of a sudden, there's this call to go and do missions. What was that like for you?
Well, in our life, I think the Lord started working in us about at the same time, just saying, there's more that I want for you. You kind of gotten caught up in this like progression of doing better at work and getting better cars and getting bigger houses and things like that. Not that we ever had a big house, but just that idea of kind of getting caught up in what becomes important to you. And the Lord really started working in us at the same time about that, and showing us that the things that had become so important to us weren't so important in life. And so that's when we committed to each other, let's just pray through this and see what changes God wants to make. And we weren't certain that God was calling us to overseas missions. We weren't certain that God was calling us into missions or ministry at all. We just knew that a change needed to be made in our life. So we started praying about that, and just praying about what direction God was leading us in that, and came to a certain point where we were like, okay, let's just fill out the initial information form with the board and just see where it leads us. So we said yes, not to going overseas, but to that first initial step. We're going to give them our name and see what happens from there. And that's pretty much the process that God led us down through the entire interview process with the board. Was we said yes to each small step, instead of just saying, yes, we know we're going overseas. It was like every time we got approved and went into the next step of the process, we said, okay, we can feel that we're still where God wants us to be. So let's continue to go down this process. Let's have this next meeting or this next interview. And I remember the day that we got an email that said, would you consider serving in Chiang Mai, Thailand? And I immediately looked at Scott and I was like, no, I'm not serving in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I did not want to go to Thailand just because Asia was such a drastic difference from the Mississippi that I had always lived in.
Yeah.
But, slowly but surely, God really chiseled away that defiance in my life and showed me that he had a purpose for our family there. And so we said yes to Chiang Mai, Thailand. And you guys, a lot of you in the congregation today will remember when I stood before you before we had even left to go to that mission field and said, God has not, like, my heart has not just changed. I still don't want to go to Thailand, but he's called me there, and so I'm going to go. And that's truly our story.
Wow.
Look back on it now and see so many ways that God used us in Thailand and other people's lives, but more than that, did such a work in us through the ministry that he had for us there in Thailand. And it really changed us. And I think it just gave us a greater sense of the need for his word to be spread throughout the nations. And, we're not in Thailand today. We live in a very, very different place from Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Yeah.
But the Lord, his his love needs to be known here just as much as it did there, and just
Yeah.
as much as it needs to be known in the States. And so he continues just to work through us, but also work in us and where he has us.
So when you answered this call to go overseas, had the girls been born yet?
Well, actually, when we first started
yeah.
the process with the board, we had Taylor and Lillian,
Yeah.
and a few weeks after we started the process, we found out we were pregnant with Holland.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I can imagine that, as a mom and dad, you're kind of wrestling with God's call on your life. And, this is not a move to Tennessee, it's a move to the other side of the world and leaving family and, a lot of the great holiday traditions and things that, a lot of times we think about with family in the South. And so kind of walk us through that, as you're realizing that it's not just the two of you, you're moving your whole family to the other side of the world.
I think one of the most difficult things about that when we were in the process with the board was because we lived 10 minutes away from Scott's parents, and they were very actively involved in our life and with the girls. And so it was kind of the realization that we wouldn't have those extra hands to help us out, and we wouldn't be able to have Sunday lunches together. And, all of our communication is done via the computer and FaceTime. And so I think it was just kind of, we went through a little bit of a grieving process of knowing that we weren't going to be just 10 minutes down the road from family. We weren't going to be just one flight away from family. I mean, to get to Thailand, it's a significant travel. And so that was we had to come to terms with that and really kind of wrestle through that with the Lord before we were ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't think about the blessing of our children serving with us and watching us serve full time. I mean, there's so many, a lot of times we think about, the things you give up, like being away from family and being away from but there's so many things that you gain. There's so many things that, your kids are so blessed to have the opportunity to see God at work through you and in other parts of the world, and to realize that the world is bigger than just the county that we live in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
we try to involve our kids in the ministry that we do, both in Thailand and now here in Denmark as well, just as much as possible, because it truly is a family ministry that we have. It's not just something that Daddy does or something that Mommy does, but it's something that we all do together.
Yeah, well, I can tell that they're great at it. There's no question about that. Kind of talk to us about, so you were in Thailand, now you're in Denmark. So how did that happen?
Yeah, we knew we went to Thailand for a shorter term assignment, so we knew that would be a 2-year assignment. And to be honest, when we left Denmark, when we left Thailand and we were to come back home for a time at the States, where Casey had to wrestle with the idea of originally going to Thailand, when we came back, I thought we were going back to Thailand. I was completely sure that that was where the Lord had called us. And when we came back to the States, about a week after we had been in town, we went to a meeting with the board, and there was just a lot of changes going on within the IMB at that time, and a lot of people had left the field for a certain reason, and the biggest need within the board at that time was in Europe. And so every meeting that we had with the people on the board at that time was pointing towards a deep need in Europe. And we always said that the Lord didn't necessarily call us to a specific people, but he called us to ministry and to minister and to share the gospel and to have people come to know him, and to do that wherever we are. Right. And so I had to deal with that a little bit, because I was grieved to not go back to Thailand. I was excited about it. We had had a good ministry there, and the Lord had done some stuff that we were really excited about. And And when he called us to move to one of the most secular places in all the world, in Denmark, it was a tough yes. It was, you know, and we're here, and it's a tough yes every day. It's not something that's been easy to live in this spiritually dark climate that we live in now. But we know that the Lord is here and the Lord is working, and that He will draw people to Himself, and we claim that. We take rest in that. But that's kind of how we moved from Thailand to Denmark, is just because of the great need and what is classified by many as the least reached continent right now is Europe.
Mm, mm, mm. What is we're talking to different people and hearing stories from the field, and everybody that we talk to, the specifics that they do in their job are a little bit different. Some are church planning, some are logistics, some are communications. So what does it look like for you guys on a day-to-day basis? What are some of the things that you focus on to open up opportunities?
Yeah, so we're a little bit of a mixed bag, where Casey does communications for the entire European affinity. So she helps with communications there, and that's her gifting, that's her expertise. She's got multiple degrees in that, so it's really a good thing for the affinity, and also using her gifts and talents. And we are a church planting family, so we are here to engage in church planting and do that with national partners. So engage with Danish people in planting Danish-speaking Danish churches, and that's our task here. And I do that through a local Baptist church who supports our visa here. So a lot of times I'm working with specifically with that local Baptist church, and then with the Danish Baptist Union as a whole, to kind of catalyze their church planting ministry that they have, or before we came, actually have not had in the past, and we're developing that with them even as we speak over the past year and into next year. So that's kind of what.
So I'm assuming you guys have had to learn the language too, right?
Yes, we have. We have, and we still are every day. The kids speak Danish fluently, like normal Danes speak Danish. And Casey and I, we really do our best, and we struggle through it. And the blessing of living here is most everybody, the level of English is a very high level of English. So we do know the language, and we speak the language, and whenever we struggle mightily, the Danes are actually very nice to switch over and speak it.
So you grew up with the language of the South, and then you're trying to learn language enough to communicate in Thailand.
Right.
Now you're trying to learn Danish. I mean, does it just swirl around in your head? I mean, do you?
Sometimes, and we try our best to teach our Danish friends Mississippian, not English, but
that's right. Very distinct. Absolutely. Great. Well, now, as we hear about European countries, you think postmodern, post-Christian world, and there's certainly a lot of studies that say America is kind of going that path. What does postmodernism, post-Christian environment, what does it look like where you are?
Yeah, it's interesting here in Denmark. There's a state church. So the state church is Lutheran denomination, and roughly 80% of Danes would claim membership to that state church.
Okay.
And what that means is that 80% of people are giving 1% in tax to the state church, which then the government helps, divvies out to run the churches. But they're getting their kids baptized as infants, and a lot of kids are going through confirmation when they're 14, 15 years old within the state church. But it's all ceremonial. It's non-belief. The average Dane that you would ask, if you get into a spiritual conversation with them and you'd ask them, are they Christian? They would say, yeah, I'm Christian, but but I'm not religious. I'm not a believer. I don't believe I'm Christian because Denmark is a Christian nation.
Yeah.
And it's to the fact that really they just don't even think, they're so far past Christianity, it just doesn't even come into their mind a sense of eternity, a sense of that there may be a God out there. These aren't things that they think about on a daily basis. They just go about their lives without any thought whatsoever put to that.
You know, I think a lot of people here, you know, when you think about missions, you think about feeding those who are impoverished, you think about digging wells, you think about helping build structures. But you live in, I mean, Copenhagen is a worldwide city. I mean, you live in a relatively affluent part of the world, an educated part of the world, and people don't think, I guess people don't equate that with lostness.
Right.
But then you see where, of course, Jesus tells us easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And so, you know, you're in a part of the world that in a lot of ways may be harder to reach. And you've said that, harder to reach probably even than in Thailand.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's had to have been frustrating in some sense, to go from an area where people were hungry for the gospel to an area where people are like, no, I'm good. You know, I don't need that. Go ahead,
And
Casey.
that's exactly the sentiment here, because the Danes are so well taken care of by their government. They have a socialized healthcare system. They have you know, a fixed salary rate in place. They have no needs. They don't have physical needs.
Yeah.
And because of that, it really makes it difficult to reach Danes with the gospel, because they truly in their hearts feel like they want for nothing. They have everything that they could ever need, and so they can't recognize that there is something in their life that they're missing. And I think they take offense. Like if you tell them, you know, you're missing out on the love of Jesus Christ, like they kind of take offense to that, because they're like, I have everything that I need.
Wow. My
Yeah,
goodness.
and the Christianity has been gone for so long that even you know, in Thailand, a Buddhist context, there's a spirituality there.
Yeah.
Well, here that Christianity has been looked past for so long now that there's just a lack of spirituality. There's no spirituality of any kind whatsoever.
My goodness. Wow. What are some things that you're excited about?
You know, over Corona has impacted everybody, right? It's impacted the States clearly, and it's impacted Europe, and we're actually going through a little bit of an uptick again, where things have begun to shut down a little bit more. And we've recently been limited from 50 people gathering. Now we're back down to 10 because of an uptick. But really, over Corona time, people have been more open to having spiritual discussions and talking about things of eternity. We've done some different things as well. We've tried to put it out there as much as we can in a contextualized Danish way of engaging with culture, which isn't we just walk up and talk to anybody on the street. It's not a Mississippi friendly type of culture.
Right.
But we've opened the church here recently to have open church time, where you can come in, and if you want to talk to someone, you can talk to someone. If you want to just come in and pray, and when I say open church, I really mean like opening the doors to our church where they're wide open, and posting signs and saying, come in if you want to. And little things like that get us really excited, to where somebody who may never walk through the doors of the church, or who may walk by the church every day and see those doors closed, now can have an opportunity to come in and have peace and quiet, or light a candle, or do something that engages in spirituality, where we can be there as believers to engage with them in conversation when they come to that. So that's one thing that's really exciting right now. That the other thing is, we had been gathering as a group of several different churches to go through a Bible study course, and we had 40 to 45 people come in to have a meal together, and to watch a video, and then to discuss the video. And when the government recently dropped the limit from 50 to 10, we kind of had to split up. And thankfully, the when we split up, we reached out to different groups and said, hey, we have to split up. We can't do the meal together anymore, but we can still gather under 10 and watch this video and have a discussion. Is that something that you guys are interested in continuing to do? And all of the groups said, yes, we would love to continue to do that, because I think people are needing fellowship and desire fellowship, especially in this time. And so just the openness is something that we have been excited about. And even when things, it's almost like when things closed down, people became more open, and they're seeing this need that maybe they haven't seen in the past, because everything's just gone exactly how it's needed to go over the past 100 years here in Denmark.
Yeah. It's kind of neat to hear you say that, because it just reminds you that regardless of where you are, whether you're in Mississippi or Thailand or Denmark, people are people. God created us as relational beings, and we hunger for that relationship. And then you're right. I mean, COVID is certainly, as bad as it is, as much as we want it to all go away, it really has kind of tapped into that hunger for relationship. And like you say, I mean, we pray that God uses it to help people see that there is a greater need than just material needs. We need to wrap up. We're kind of our last couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you, as we approach Lottie Moon Christmas Offering, that means a lot to y'all. So tell us, what does that Lottie Moon Christmas Offering, how does it help you in what you do every day?
Yeah, I mean, it means everything to us. We're so appreciative of the way that Southern Baptists give to Lottie Moon. Just a couple of examples of what it does. It provides funds for a home for us. It provides education for our kids. Anything and everything. The way we travel around the city when we need to use the metro or a bus, it provides for that. Specifically, I will say, it allowed for me to go to a conference before COVID happened. It allowed for me to go to a conference with other colleagues where we were able to hear and listen to what's going on specifically in university ministry within Europe, and take back what we learned at that conference and begin a university work within our local church who had no university work. And so that was a really encouraging time for me to go and see and come back and then see our church, local church here, see that something can start, new things can begin. And I wouldn't have been able to travel to that conference without Lottie Moon. So it really does mean the world, and we do not take for granted anything that we are able to do because of the sacrificial giving of the Southern Baptist people. It's amazing. And when we were talking strategy for the Danish Baptist Union and the missions focus and the way they want to do church planting, a lot of what we are actually implementing with them has come from the idea of what we do with North American Mission Board and the International Mission Board, and the way we commit to supporting church planters both at home and internationally.
That's awesome. We got one final question, and I'm going to give both of you a chance to respond. A lot of your friends are going to be watching this, and so I want to give you a chance to share a message to the First Baptist Jackson family. So what would you like to share?
I think throughout our 6 years on the field now, we just could not be more honored to come from a sending church such as First Baptist Jackson. Other people with the board know of First Baptist Jackson. They know how faithful you guys are, not just to support financially, but also the way that you just support through prayer and encouragement, and the way that you reach out and keep contact with. So, I mean, from the beginning, we've just said, like, we just feel so proud to be sent by a church such as First Baptist Jackson, who truly cares about its missionaries and just seeks to see them supported in the absolute best way that you know how to do so. So we're so appreciative of you guys, and we miss you. Every Sunday we miss you, and we wish that we could get in our car and drive to State Street to come worship with you.
Yeah, and I would just echo that, and I would say we'll be home in summer of 2021 for a stateside assignment, and we are so excited to join back in and hop back into church and Sunday school and seeing all you guys.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank y'all so much for taking your time. And girls, thank you so much. You've been so great. You have just sat there and smiled and helped out, and we appreciate it a lot. And listen, I can't wait to see you in the summer. We really look forward to having you here and being able to get to know you more. And listen, for you girls, Merry Christmas to you. It's almost here. So Merry Christmas to you. And listen, thank you all for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking your time to hear how the Lord is work around the world as we continue to hear these stories from the field. And again, as we approach the Lottie Moon Christmas Offering, you know, you're able to kind of see how important that really is. And so we just continue to encourage you to pray about what the Lord would lead you to give to this Lottie Moon Christmas Offering so people like the Tuminellos can continue to do what they do. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of Stories from the Field. Hope that you have a great week.